It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name is Isaac.
I'm Alexis.
And as you by now are aware, for our 100th episode, we are doing the classic, yes, it's gay actually, Trigger Studio anime Kill La Kill. Or Studio Trigger as some call it.
Yes, we are.
And I refuse to apologize for this. We will, at some point, do Dungeon Meshi.
Yes, we absolutely will.
But, you know, we thought we'd mix it up a little bit. Thought we'd have a little bit of fun. So, do you want to do the plot, or shall I do the plot?
So, why don't you do the plot? Because a lot of things happen in this.
All right. Matoi Ryuko comes to town on her motorcycle. The town in question is this giant sort of ziggurat, which is topped by the local high school, which rules both this city, which is sort of Tokyo-y, and by extension, the entirety of Japan and the world. It is owned by the daughter of the Revox Corporation, which is Uniqlo essentially, she and her inner circle rule by means of superpowered clothes. But it turns out that Matoi's father, before he died in mysterious murderous circumstances, made Ryuko a superpowered sailor uniform as well. And
superpowered by blood.
Yes, it drinks her blood in order to get its powers. And through bonding with her sentient uniform, she goes out and tries to understand what happened to her father. She grows closer to her best friend Mako, and eventually figures out what the scheme is at the heart of this school and of the system of the world that we are currently in.
Yes, that was significantly longer than the half-season plot recap, but we don't talk as fast as that narrator does.
Yes. Now, are there wizards in this?
Oh yeah,
in this anime. Yeah.
I mean, Rankyo Kirin is absolutely a wizard. So is Nui.
Yes. And are there lesbians?
I mean, I think so. Given that, like, the big dramatic thing right near the end is Mako telling Ryuko, okay, before you go off into outer space to fight the big bad, promise me we'll have a date as soon as you get back. And, you know, and then Ryuko gets to, like, have her dramatic moment where she's like, I have to wrap this up fast. I have a date.
Yeah. This is a shonen anime, but the hero is a girl. And they didn't gender swap the pure-hearted love interest / cheerleader.
No, they did not.
And through basic math, that means lesbians.
Yeah.
And Matoi Ryuko never expresses any interest in anybody besides Mako or her clothing.
Right. I mean, like, I would argue that the core romance in this is the polytriad of Mako, Ryuko, and Senketsu, the clothing uniform.
Yes.
But, you know.
But that's gay enough. It's more than gay, it's queer.
It's extremely queer. I mean, there's also, you know, the lesbian child molester. Don't forget her.
Well, yes, although there are many things about her besides her being a lesbian child molester, but we'll get onto that.
Oh, no, I'm just saying for the other lesbians.
Yes.
There are lesbians on both sides of the conflict.
There are indeed. We have a classic wizard who is also a lesbian, who is also a bad mom. There's a lot of familiar Wizles stuff in here.
Right?
Which is surprising.
In a lot of weird ways, this anime did kind of, predate or was like really on the cutting edge of the zeitgeist, weirdly enough.
Yeah. But you're gonna have to trust us on this one because much of the stuff that we're about to talk about takes a while to come into focus, and the anime is busy luring in people who are not you in the meantime.
Yes. Oh my. So, well, I guess should we? So, well, okay. Why should you watch this, other than that it was on the cutting edge of the zeitgeist?
Well, you know how we keep saying, like, you keep saying it's this thing, but with lesbians. And I'm like, but I don't like that thing, even if it does have lesbians. This is the thing with lesbians that is the thing that I actually like. Shamefully enough, I was raised on Dragon Ball Z. I was an anime fan growing up. And this is an extremely anime. And it has all the stuff about, anime that my teenage self liked.
Right, like it's got the aesthetics of Evangelion combined with like the batshit crazy of Excel Saga.
Yes, it's got Gynax sort of themes and animation and the humor of whatever thing that you could scrape out of the bottom of the barrel back in the 90s.
Early odds.
And the thing about that is that it is also perfectly why you shouldn't watch it.
I mean, there's still some reasons why you should watch it, though, other than that it is the sort of thing that is designed to appeal to you.
It's deeper than it seems. There's a lot going on.
I mean, okay, but also, so I keep a sort of a mental collection of like actively anti-fascist anime, because most anime is pro-fascist. Most like action anime is pro-fascism.
Yes.
The good scenario is that it is accidentally pro-fascism because fascism has cool aesthetics, and most of the time, and then that's what it is most of the time, and then sometimes you get stuff that's just like, no, fascism. And anime, like action anime, is generally extremely unapologetic about Japanese fascism and war crimes. So when I find some anime that's like actively pushing back against fascism, in one way or another, and doing so very deliberately and explicitly, I add it to my little very short mental list. This is on there.
Yep.
And it kind of pulls the bait and, much like Satsuki does, it kind of pulls a bait and switch on you where you think this is going to be a pro-fascist anime, but it's not. It's actively not.
Yes, and we're not reaching here. The fact that the first line in the entire show is Adolf Hitler,
It opens with a history class on Adolf Hitler. And, this is mildly, when one of the major fascist characters who's been, secretly trying to use the aesthetics and organization of fascism to undermine the actual fascists, and she has to admit that didn't work and it was a bad strategy, and she apologizes for it.
Absolutely. It's surprisingly politically good and astute.
Okay, so why shouldn't you watch this?
Well, there's the fan service.
It's so fan servicey.
And like it's all. I will say this.
It's like comedy fan service, but it's still extremely fan servicey.
So if you don't know what I mean, like there's a lot of very intentionally lurid, like upskirt shots, boobs and butts. The fact that Senketsu basically has to turn into fetish gear for its to achieve ultimate power.
All the action shots are very focused on the bouncing breasts, though again some of this is highly comedic. I mean,
yeah, it's like the bouncing breasts during the transformation sequence. Nobody's turned on by that. That's just like
no, or during some of the fight sequences where where like there's a big action, the Ryuko's wielding her sword scissor and somebody else is wielding their weapon, and they, clash, and there's the glowing light, and like Ryuko's boobs are bouncing opposite each other.
Yes,
that's clearly not meant to turn anybody on, though I'm sure there's someone out there who is, and more power to you, friend.
Yes, this is like the GTA video where you turn up the physics, except it's the jiggle physics. The breasts are experiencing like hundreds and thousands of collisions per minute, and would be making the sort of Gmod noise if they could. But but that you sort of have to deal with that. There's a lot of crass there's a lot of crass humor here. um
Yes.
and a lot of like cheap humor based on cheap stereotypes. It's aware of how stupid it is, but it still really enjoys it.
Yeah, and it gets really stupid, and you know, I mean, I will give it this: the sexualization is equal opportunity.
I was going to say the it absolutely is, and it's like it's weirdly sort of there's anime that's kinky, but is like still like prurient and like not okay with it and hiding it. And this one is like unashamedly pro kink,
Yeah,
in a kind of a wholesome way at the end of the day.
yeah, you're just like, oh yeah, I know. You like when the nudists are like, you know, when someone tells the nudists, no, you're not doing this for political reasons, you're just into it, and that's not even particularly shaming. It's just like, yeah, no, that's totally the case.
Yes, no, this is obvious. It should be very obvious. But you know, you do. But it's like it is one of those things where it's like when this is getting started, it's set up that okay, this teacher is stripping in front of one of his teenage students. That's uncomfortable and bad.
Yeah,
Um, and you have to get through that in order and like be like, okay, where are they going with this? If you want to reach the point where you can enjoy the glowing nipple jokes.
right. And I mean, where they're going with this is hilarious, but still, you do have to get through that uncomfortable moment. And
Right.
you know, this anime really front loads that stuff. It's not you don't. It's really not until episode 16 where you know the politics really start to get serious.
Yeah. And you do have to like, and then you have to trust it enough by that point to be like, okay, now it's depicting like really awful, incest and sexual assault. And, but this is done in a completely different tone and with a completely different intent than all of the previous sex jokes.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to let it turn that corner, which I think it does. I think it succeeds in doing that. But the first time I watched it, I did not give it the benefit of the doubt, and I had to stop at that point. So
Oh.
I actually only got all the way through it on my rewatch this time. I
Oh
realized.
wow. It I think that because the person who is showing it to me is somebody whose um taste and opinions I trust.
Right.
So shout out to Bing. And so that really helped. And Bing had sort of and Bing had like promised me that no, it gets serious in an interesting way later.
Yes, I had no indication that they were actually going to follow through on it. I was just like, ugh, and sort of gave up. And that may be
Yeah.
your reaction, but I found the ending genuinely moving. um,
Yeah. And
and so
like that's a reason why you should watch this is that this anime manages to sell you on the idea that people are people and clothes are clothes as like this like genuinely kind of moving sentiment.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, there is that. You're gonna have to get over the hump, as it were, and
I would okay, so basically what I would say is probably if you don't like anime or if you haven't watched a lot of anime, this is may not be the one to start with, especially
oh
because
God, no.
it is full of visual references and jokes, and it's a satire, and you know, especially like the first half is particularly a satire in the genre, and then the second half is more of a sort of vicious deconstruction. And
Yeah.
so, while still being trying to be an action comedy, and so like if this is the first, this should not be your starter anime. But if you've seen Utena, you would probably like this. If you've seen Evangelion, I don't even know what the kids are watching these days, but if you've seen whatever you're watching these days, probably, and you enjoy it, then this might still be worth checking out.
I mean, it's a shonen. You can
Yeah.
if you've watched a shonen anime, whether that's Hunter x Hunter or Chainsaw Man or whatever the current one is, you'll understand the basic beats of this. But you also have to sort of resign yourself if you're not if you're not Japanese, you're not going to get all the jokes, even if you like speak the language and you're a huge weeb. Like I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff, particularly a bunch of puns that went over my head. Although you can still enjoy some of the wordplay just because of how it sounds. As with the ninefold sucking machine, which is like the Q Q Q Q Q Q Q Q Q Q thing.
Yes.
And that's not sexual. That specific one. So content warnings, though.
Well, there's incest and grooming and molestation.
Yep, I'd say that's probably the most immediately upsetting stuff.
Happens right on screen.
Yep. Torture.
Tons of blood.
Yeah, violence, destruction, anime. I'm sure again there's plenty of things we were forgetting, but I think like the thing that jumps out is the on-screen lesbian molestation
Yes.
of one's own daughter.
Yes.
So shall we head off to the spoiler zone?
Let's. I mean, we've done a fair amount of spoiling already, but it's really hard to discuss why you should watch this without doing some spoilering. So.
Yeah, I think that this is one where forewarned is probably better, honestly,
Yeah.
at least from my perspective, because I couldn't get through it without having it been forewarned the first time.
Yeah, and I think I also know people who couldn't get through it on the first watch because the fascism parts of the first half seemed too gleeful.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the spoiler zone and talk about that.
Yeah.
Spoiler zone. So, yeah, I think that like it's about fascism and it's also like about a bunch of other things.
Right, but I really like how it's about specifically the way that the aesthetics of fascism are used to, suck people in.
Yes, there's Hugo Boss is not named by name here, but he should be, and I will name him repeatedly. Did you know that that still existing, still selling clothes company was responsible for those cool Nazi uniforms? But and Volkswagen was responsible for their vehicles, and nobody really paid any consequences for any of that. But
no, and it's the same can be said for some of the Japanese companies that enabled fascism, and
Mitsubishi, for example,
right? And the war criminals who continued to have political futures, and their children and grandchildren continue to have political futures. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but anyway, the thing is I think that sometimes that gets like we talk a lot about the dangers of fascism. Oh God, boy, did I. This was scheduled to be recorded the weekend before the election, and then I got sick and we had to push it back a week.
That's just a little added savor, a little spice.
Right, but I mean the thing is, and part of it is that American fascism does not have like good aesthetics.
And thank God for that. Can you imagine your most annoying friends being like, "Well, we do need to change things, and this is cool."
But the thing is that, there is people are still getting sucked into the aesthetics of other countries' fascism. And, the amount of anime fans I know who are flat out denialists and boosters for Japanese war crimes.
People have memory hold Hetalia, for the most part.
Right?
If you weren't there and in the fandom at that time, you will not know why there was a lot of discourse about people walking around dressed like Nazis in anime cons for like years, and people being like, "What? It's a character in a show that's about cute, boy lovey gajinkas of fascist Germany and Italy and Japan and everybody." But it's consider that as sort of the environment in which the show exists and what it's reacting to, for one thing. But yeah, no, this is from the statue, the sort of marble statue brigade, like wasn't Greek and particularly Sparta and Rome, weren't they cool people, all the way to all the way into the weeb Imperial Japan apologists. We have no shortage of people who are super into the aesthetics of fascism to this day. And that is a major part of what is being satirized here.
Yeah, well, and again, it's not just, like, it starts out being satire, and then it flat out hits you over the head with, in case you didn't get the message, this is bad.
Yes. The uniforms do eat you eventually.
Right, I mean, but again, like, and so, like, the uniforms eat you. It's feeding on your blood, and also, you still get the moment where Satsuki is like, I thought that this was the right thing to do, and I was wrong. This is very much you cannot dismantle the master's house using the master's tools moment. And she just flat out says it, and is like, if you need to punch me in the face and kill me for this, you can.
Yeah, no, I literally have that sentence written down in my notes. Audre Lorde said, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. This article that I'm reading calls it an intellectual body slam and an atomic bomb of discussion enders. I would say that an appropriate response is then what am I supposed to do? Gnaw it to death? Am I supposed to run repeatedly into a brick wall? Or, as this anime posits, become some strange hybrid entity of human and tool. And the solution that is presented to this is that, you can, it's sort of a sort of radical hybridization between the cool look and anarchist politics, which I guess is what, this show is very pro-punk in that way.
Yes.
And the question of what is actually invulnerable to commercialization is an interesting one. But it's doing this on a lot of levels. There is on the one level like fascism, and on the other level like art, culture, like the fact that it's that covers or Revox is the 6 capital letters, just like Uniqlo's. Like we are revolting at the idea that everybody will become the same and will think the same and have the same sort of culture. This is like sort of post-punk. Fugazi writes songs about this kind of stuff. Check the math here. Check in 10 years. Clusterfuck theory. Buy them up and shut them down and repeat in every town. Every town will be the same. And that was from 1998. And it made me think if you could do this same anime with furniture rather than with clothes, and it would be IKEA and then IAKI backwards. Which actually works really well in Japanese.
You could, but then you don't get the, you could do that. You could do that on the culture level, yes.
Yeah, but it
maybe not the
there's not specifically
level.
Fascist furniture as far as I'm aware. Well, write in if you can name a specifically fascist piece of furniture.
But the outfits tend to be much more appealing, I think, than the furniture when people are getting really into the aesthetics.
Yes.
Like the fonts, I guess, for the higher level. But
don't talk to me about Helvetica and the Swiss. Read all of this, incidentally, but
or Gil Sans. Don't get me started on Gil Sans.
I'm gonna have to do so many explanatory jingles for this episode. But yes,
I know. But hey, no, this is relevant to the themes.
A lot of font designers were fascists. It's weird. It's something about wanting things to be just so, You've probably seen Gil Sans around, possibly on signs for the London Underground. He was an arts and crafts guy, then he became a Catholic, then he molested his daughters, his sister, and his dog. What else is there to say? Font people are weird. It belatedly occurs to me that this makes it sound like the guy's name was Gil Sans. Gil Sans is the name of the font. Eric Gill is the guy who designed it and did the fiddling. This has nothing to do with Sans Undertale, who was named after Comic Sans, which was designed by Vincent Kinnair.
But yeah, so the punk aesthetic, to some degree, what this anime is arguing is that there is no escape from the commercialization of art, and so you're just gonna have to go around nude.
Yeah, it's sort of the. It reminds me of Noid's approach to things in Disco Elysium in a way.
We were gonna have to bring up Disco Elysium.
I'm probably.
No, I mean, I was really exerting some effort not to. So
why?
Speaking of the things
we've done an episode on it. It's a great game.
I know, but I'm trying not to be that person.
Again, what's wrong with being that person?
Yeah. So anyway, so Noid is right. Like this idea that you have to be, but he just completely, completely opt out. Except even Noid like is willing to befriend, is sort of seduced into befriending the weirdo cop, partly because he has cool clothes.
Yeah, I mean it is one of those like it's one of those tragedies that even the worst people can have great taste, and some of the artists that you love can be horrible people. It turns out that beauty doesn't actually mean anything. It isn't truth, in the real world. But we still, it is, however, one of the major lights that we have to follow, and so. Something needs to be possible.
And I like that all the nudist beach like machinery and stuff is ugly.
Yes.
And stupid. I mean, it looks kind of it's ugly and stupid.
They're really trying their best to be as lame as possible in order to resist the cultural hegemony of taste.
Right, and I mean, that's kind of this beautiful message, right? About sometimes you just got to be incredibly cringe. That is how you're going to survive the cultural hegemony.
Yeah, it reminds me of John Waters and his whole, essentially moral philosophy of trash. And I think that if you wanted to explain why the anime is so lowbrow and gross in a lot of places, and sort of alongside, the larger points it has to make, you could do worse than pointing at something like pink flamingos, and it's just we're
you're right, actually. That really you can trace a sort of DNA there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, not necessarily, could easily be a parallel evolution of concepts. True. but it does feel familiar to me on that level.
So you were going to say a third level before I brought us back to nudist speech.
Oh yeah. So this is Studio Trigger's first album. This is Studio Trigger's first series after escaping from its parent company, Gainax.
I didn't even know they were a Gainax spinoff. That makes so much sense.
Yes. And I think that the sort of the mom the mom metaphor works on a number of levels. It's like you have been completely consumed by the capitalist anime industry. I'm still interested in making art, and this is here's where I'm going to draw the line between you and me. But I think one of the most striking images in the show is. And one that never, they never make anything of it. It's never even mentioned. It's just on the screen, which I think is so smart, is the huge scars on the mom's back.
Oh, yeah.
Because Kiryuin is a, the Kiryuin family has been part of this for so many generations. And it's clear that the abuse that Sasuke is suffering is being passed down in a way, and that her mother experienced the same kinds of abuse, and the marks of it are on her body.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never mentioned. It's just sort of like, of course, that's how it is, you know. Um,
Because you see her trying to fuse these life threads into her kids, and
right.
so you know that this sort of thing was happened to her, and you wonder. You don't. Satsuki doesn't see, and I guess Ryuko don't seem to have any aunts and uncles.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to Ragyo's siblings? What happened to Ragyo's parents? It's just her in this massive mansion and her daughter who she's abusing.
Yeah. Uh, it's like there can only be one person in charge of this. Like this thing where it's like when you mix power and money and art like this, it becomes it the desire for complete hegemony and monopoly sort of becomes self-perpetuating, and there isn't any room for friends or lovers in there. Um, it's
Right, and also, this is a family that quite literally eats its children.
yes,
I mean, that's what happens to Nui, who's the third quasi daughter of this family, and she gets disassembled and woven into her mother's body.
let's talk about Nui for a second, because that's the in this is another thing in sort of in the third layer that I'm talking about, because Nui's character design is Moe Blob, right?
Extremely Moe Blob, except that she has the one eye patch.
Yes, that's the one mark of where the contradiction injured her, and
Mm-hmm.
the person who gave her that eye patch, Ryuko's dad, he's a Tezuka character design
Yeah, he super is.
in both his form.
Yes, both his proto form and right, both when he's Ragyo Kiruin's husband,
Yeah,
he's like a Tezuka, young man, and then when you see him old, he's very much Tezuka old man.
one of my favorite, well, not even old, one of my favorite jokes in the anime is that you get like a 2-second series of him giving himself the hunchback, by like going, um,
Right.
and like shrinking.
He turns himself into a Tezuka old man.
Right, exactly. I probably don't have to explain who Osamu Tezuka is. He was called the god of manga for a reason. You've almost certainly seen at least some of his work. At the very least in The Lion King. He was also a furry. And it's like, and the fact that Nui's whole power is that she's two-dimensional and that she creates all these paper dolls of herself, and has no emotional range whatsoever, is is the cheerful psychopath, is the
Right.
like this to me is like clearly, okay, you've taken something that we loved and you've sucked all the juice out of it, and you've made the most commercial and false possible thing out of it, art about art, again, but definitely definitely specifically about the history of manga and anime in Japan, in addition to everything else.
Right. And then you get the moment near the end where Ragyo, unweaves her and then weaves her over her own body, and especially because Ragyo has already been established as textually a child molester, this really gives off, oh, you're also molesting your other daughter.
Yeah,
Just in a in a metaphorical way now, but you absolutely are.
and it's honestly like that draws the bright obvious line between moe blob ascendancy in anime and this culture of child molestation. Like, I think that's a point that the show is trying to make, and this is the same show that's spending a lot of time up our teenage protagonist's skirt. I'm not,
Yes.
so maybe let he who is without sin cast the first stone, but still. But I do think that is intentional, and that there's a connection that's being made between essentially like raping your own daughters uh, and intentionally marketing to the lowest common denominator by doing all this stuff that is essentially, catering to pedophiles.
I don't even think it's about taste. I think it's specifically about these, these designs of making all of your teenage girl characters these little moe blobs.
Yeah, it irons the humanity out of them. If and it makes for worse art in addition to everything else.
File this under reason number 76 why we are not doing Madoka.
At least some attempt was made there with there is some art to Madoka.
There is, yes.
I will not deny that, but yes.
No.
But yeah, so we've talked about all that. So let's talk about the actual anime and what happens in it a little bit.
Yes. So I had actually forgotten most of the plot in the decade since I watched this. I remembered Satsuki's plot because it's pretty striking and memorable, and I totally remembered the relationship between Ryuko and Mako and Senketsu. And I'd managed to completely forget everything else until I was reminded.
Even poor Ira.
Yeah, even poor Ira.
One thing that I really, incidentally, speaking of things that just punch my buttons specifically, I love animation where nobody cares about character designs being, the same from one episode to another, or scale, or anything like that. I love the way that Iragamagori just grows and shrinks depending on how big he needs to be for any given scene.
Right. I mean, this anime is totally willing to give, multiple characters are basically created by, are drawn ripping off multiple artist styles.
Yeah, but it's all done in a series with a sense of good fun,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a love letter to its genre, which includes all the problematic stuff. But if this were a Western movie, it would have won several Oscars. They love that shit. And also, what comes with that, the oh shit, we ran out of money, feeling that you get while watching Gainax and Studio Trigger anime. And it's everything suddenly gets way more simple and then gets way more complicated again. And
yes, and suddenly there's a lot of dramatic stills.
Yes, slow pans over still images. Because the still images are very cool. We can get more out of them. But yeah, I was interested in the student council this time around mostly because of their kink-themed superpowers. And, while we still think that they're, on the bad guy's side because, they're part of sort of Satsuki's attempt to dismantle fascism using the tools of fascism, you sort of wonder, what the book is saying, or what the text is saying about all of that. But, what it turns out it's saying in the end is that these are all good people whose loyalty toward their friend boss is what humanizes them, and their wish to change the world. So the fact that they're voyeurs or masochists or whatever is going on with the band girl. The sort of yandere, lesbian
non
band girl,
yes.
It's that's all cool.
Something's definitely going on with her.
Oh yeah. There's a part where Satsuki is literally riding her, through space, and she's like, yeah, no, it's fine as long as I'm always on top of you, isn't it? But yeah, no, I think besides being funny and cool in a sort of shonen, escalating peril kind of a way, that is largely about, the being I think this anime thinks that being kinky and weird is a way to be uh, anti-establishment. This raises the classic question: is kink a queer identity? Oh, we could spend hours talking about it. I'm gonna say no, but Fujoshi is.
Yeah. But, well, still, like, it doesn't save them from being co-opted.
No,
but...
not at all. Nobody is safe from being co-opted here. Even
No.
Matoe herself gets like brainwashed and co-opted repeatedly and has to be sort of saved. Only, and even Mako gets.
Even Mako gets, but Mako is, I think, the least co-optable in that, all it really takes is being given an opportunity to stop and think, given an opportunity to attack her best friend, and then she goes, "Wait a minute, this is against all of my values."
Yes, there is like, I don't know, there's something here about, if I was to have a quibble with this show, it does the thing where people that, art that's concerned with like big political movements tends to do, which is the common people tend to not end up looking too great.
Sort of, except that, like, I mean, Mako goes through the entire show. She's always in the big action scene, and like she just carries her own genre with her.
Yes, she does. That is true. I mean, I guess Mako is the great, exception to that, because her commonness is her, like, not to say like simplicity, not to say she's an idiot, is like her major strength. But I think that's part of what I'm trying to get at, is that it's like, particularly that episode where the family becomes rich and then descends back to poverty again, and they're happier in poverty.
But like, part of the thing is that her family is drawn again from like a completely different genre of anime.
Yeah, they're the Four Koma family.
Right, exactly. Like, and so they act like a Four Koma family.
Four Koma is comic strip in Japanese, because it has 4 panels. And
the thing is that I don't feel like the anime actually has contempt for them. I mean, they're funny, but at the same time, they are like, they get what they want out of everything. And like, everyone else is having these major dramas, and they're like, "Oh, good, we can have food now." But they're still they're evacuating. Her dad is a back alley doctor and is treating the wounded. Like, you're having all this massive high level battle stuff, but I think Mako's family actually sort of works as a way of going, but also there's a human cost. And there's still the people on the ground who have to deal with that. And yeah, maybe they're kind of crass, but they're still people.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one it's a tough line to walk, like, to do that without feeling condescending or like insulting, I guess. I always feel
and I'm not sure that it pulls it off 100%, but I think that it does a better job.
It at least tries, and it thinks about it.
Yeah.
It's obviously thinking about it, and like that cartoonish, rags to riches to rags, but we're all happier because we have each other thing does happen, like in the front of the anime before things have started to get really complicated.
Right.
Like, it's sort of clearly a bit that's using to establish the, in case you didn't notice, the hierarchy that we're dealing with here.
Right. And also because the first half of the season is very much playing with tropes, and you have to fight your best friend is a classic trope. It's it's Utena and Wakaba.
Yeah, there are instantly a bunch of Utena references in here as well. Some of them musical. There's like the serious piano piece is very, very Utena when that comes in. I like the music in this anime, incidentally. It's not like, all timer, but it's good.
It's solid, and I do enjoy that everybody has their own transformation sequence theme music.
They do.
With like lyrics and everything, so that when Kirin Ragyo gets her transformation sequence, you're like, oh yes, and she also gets a transformation sequence and music, even though she is a woman in her 30s or 40s.
Yes. And she has her own theme song. This is, I mean, I do like the kind of leitmotif stuff where characters get their own theme songs. She gets her own.
Yeah.
and Satsuki gets her own, and Matoya gets her own. Ryuko. I mean, I keep referring to her by her wrong name, but and also Mako has her own theme song for her bits.
Well, Mako has her own theme song, and Mako also brings along her own stage lighting, and she will insert herself into something. The tone will completely change, and then it will resume whatever is going on. She's from like a cheerful sports anime. She's the love interest from like a sports anime, and she's just bringing that energy with her everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I like her that her miming is sometimes understandable and is sometimes completely opaque. Yes. Also,
yes. Also, I enjoy Gamagori's weird crush on her, like his in spite of himself crush on her.
He admires her purity, and I mean, there's no two ways about it. This is a man who loves, singularity of purpose.
And boy, does she have singularity of purpose.
Yes. She wants to eat food, and she wants to help her friend, even though she does not understand her friend at all. That's the other fun thing, is that all of her deep insights into Ryuko's mind are completely incorrect, but
right.
It doesn't, but she still ends up saying the right thing anyway.
Because, I mean, her insights are wrong, but what she's, essentially, what she's basically saying is, I trust you and your decisions, and you should follow your heart. Mm-hmm. Because again, she's from a sports anime.
Right. If I can get sort of music wanky for a minute, I think that her particular theme is very fun, is like a fun sort of bit of storytelling, because like, I think she is in the end the character who we are all supposed to be. She's admirable, because she is, as you say, the one who is most immune to being consumed by capital, or however you want to phrase it. And like her theme is so like tasteless, like specifically like it has snatches of all like of your popular hits. It starts with the beat from the Hallelujah chorus, and then we get like a sort of a bongo beat with like the world's saddest violin playing something that is almost Satie's Gymnopody #1, but isn't quite. And like, I think that it's like, we're meant to be like, yes, this is a complete mess, but it's an enthusiastic mess, and it still works. So good synergy between music and the action there.
Yes. And I also think that, part of Mako's value is that she's really living that to be free you must be cringe message of and she's able to do it without being a nudist.
Yes, although she does get naked quite a lot, but so does every other character in this.
This I mean, she gets naked about as much as everyone else. But like, she's not going around specifically dramatically stripping, except for strategically placed ammo belt.
Yeah, she does wear the nudist beach uniform for a while, but one of my favorite running gags in the show is that Matsuo Yuko never gets over when the teacher is around, like there's no getting inured to his nudity. Like
right.
Every other character's nudity you just sort of deal with, but like she just side-eyes
this
it
is her teacher.
Gradually slides away from it at every point. Meanwhile, Mako's mom sort of side-eyes it and sidles towards it, being more age appropriate, I suppose.
Yes. I mean, his nipples are glowing.
Yes, among other things.
And like his strategically placed tool belt has like strategically faced phallic tools hanging right in the right place.
Yes, indeed. And we're the glow is intense even from the back. We're yes. Yes, it's best not to linger. But regardless, I did want to let's talk a little bit about Ryuko herself.
Let's.
Sort of a rebel without a cause, a very cool character.
Right. Well, she slides in on her motorcycle with her guitar case that actually has like half a scissor in it. But
Yeah. They get the Akira slide out of the way in like the first episode, if I recall correctly.
yes, yes.
Um,
So she's definitely radiating those cool shonen rebel vibes.
but I think the thing that I find most interesting about her is like the way that she gets got when she does get got. Like as far as like actually, this is another one where it's like because we're in such a minefield of irony when the actual, horrifying or emotional moments come through, they hit all the harder as a result.
Mm-hmm.
The Satsuki getting molested is definitely one of those moments, but another one is like what does the mom show her in order to compromise her? It's like, well, you're a rebel, but you never had an opportunity to choose to be not a rebel, right? Your
Right.
circumstances made you into this sort of like vagabond, tough kid. Let me show you what a normal life would have been like, and that
Mm-hmm.
just breaks her, um, in seconds. And it's like, I think there's something I think there's something really, really true about that. Like when you have been offered comfort so, so infrequently, you know, in your life, and the prospect of like actually getting to be part of the culture that you hate and make fun of is powerful. um, Powerful enough, I think, to swamp one's morals and one's values and one's sense of self a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, both Ryuko and Satsuki really want, both of them are lacking family. Satsuki because her mother is molesting her, and Ryuko because her father's dead.
Yeah.
And, and in both cases, that lack is really what's driving them. I mean, one of the things that Satsuki says is that, I'm getting revenge for my father and for my baby sister who I never got to know, who you killed.
Hmm.
Um,
But didn't, because they're secretly sisters, which unfortunately that puts the pin in what might have been some very good Yuri, unfortunately. But
yes.
there's definitely a frisson between them before that point. But anyway.
Yes, but and so like it's not just about normalcy, it's also
Love.
sort like it's love, and it's filling this sort of instability and filling this sort of emotional gap that they don't that maybe that like you can see with Mako that maybe you don't necessarily value it in the moment. The Mako actually does, like she even brings souvenirs back for her family.
Hmm.
But that like but still, like they're pretty comedic and you can understand them being kind of irritating, but it's also this thing that's this huge lack in both of the girls' lives.
Yeah. No, there's definitely something to be said for that. Um, and the mom alien is just good enough at simulating it to sell her on it in that moment. Via magic, of
Yeah,
course, but
right.
it's an easy connect. It's an easy thing to be like, oh, my long lost daughter, you are going to be my daughter now. And if you say that with enough spin on it, maybe it would work.
Yeah, well, she doesn't know what is happening to her other daughter, so um, so one thing I like about the mom alien is that also she just really demonstrates how weird like she's high fashion,
Yes.
and her outfits get every time she shows up, her outfits get weirder and like she looks less human.
Indeed. I love her rainbow effect. That it's like it's so
Yes.
cool, and it's sort of it pivots on what's initially a joke, like that whenever Satsuki appears, like she is accompanied by this blinding radiance because she's the Ojo-sama of the school.
Mm-hmm.
But But in fact, this is a hereditary power, and her mother's like rainbow light is actually, a thing that can overcome people.
Mm-hmm.
Segue to trying to figure out Senketsu.
We haven't talked about Senketsu at all. We should talk about Senketsu.
I don't quite know what to make of Senketsu. I mean,
because, part of the thing is, the first episode, when Senketsu shows up, the Senketsu Ryuko bonding scene is incredibly uncomfortable. Like, it's extremely sexually assault coded.
It is, yeah. And like this is one of those things that you have to make it through to get to the rest of the anime. Is like, one of the things that she has to overcome initially is being embarrassed about wearing this like essentially fetish outfit. Which, it is later explained it has to be that way because the less, it's the less contact it has with her skin, the more able she's going to be able to control it. But,
right.
We all roll our collective eyes, as does the creators. They all know that this is garbage, but, and why this is here. It's, we got to sell this show. But, but yeah, no, I think there's I think that what it ends up being is like, both sort of a way to be whole while still being able to mourn her dead dad, because he's sort of becomes the dad figure, which again makes the fact that it starts as a sort of sexual assault vibe even worse. But also that like, but also I think it's integrating the lost part of yourself. I think that, sort of her bond with Senketsu is meant to mirror the bond between clothing and human that can actually, or between symbol and individual that can actually be powerful and not let one overtake the other, through essentially, patience and self-understanding and, but that's my best that's my best shot at it. I'm doing my best here.
Yeah, well, the thing is that her relationship with Senketsu, what it is, sort of changes throughout. There's times when Senketsu is this sort of older family figure, and there's times when Senketsu is almost a love interest despite being an outfit. And then there's also the thing where, when Ryuko finds out that she and Senketsu have both been created as living weapons against the parasitic alien clothing fibers that have, shaped human evolution, her objection to fighting isn't, I don't want to be a living weapon. It's, you can't force Senketsu to be a living weapon against his own kind.
Yeah, and I think that like part of how like raw that is and how it doesn't cohere is, again, this is a problem that we run into when we are over determining our symbols, as so many creators have run into in the past, because he is doing quite a lot of work on the symbolic front there.
Yeah.
But I think that if I were to sort of narrow, if I were to like, put a my best crack at it is that like there is some way in which he's like, man, I really do like drawing these, boobs and butt poses and these high school girls in skimpy outfits. I really do like that, but I'm also like an artist and a good person. Like, is there any kind of middle path that I can follow here? I think perhaps his complicated character represents that struggle.
I think you're also right that he's a little bit of an overdetermined symbol.
Yes. And particularly because we also have Junketsu, who we never get to hear from, Satsuki's sort of zombie clothing, equivalent, and that never quite gets solved or addressed.
Yeah. But Senketsu's big moment is when another human being can hear him.
Yeah, he's lonely. you know?
Yeah. Well, he's lonely, but also like the idea that it's very specifically, you know, he Satsuki talks to him and he's like, "Wait, you can hear me now?" And like that gives him that's the revelation for him. Oh, I can be this bridge because I'm being seen as a sentient being and not just as a living weapon. And that, you know, allows him to unlock his to throw off the, you know, control of the alien thread rainbows. This is a very hard show to describe sometimes.
Well, yes, it's. I mean, anime is at its best when it's on like 3 levels of deconstruction at once. There's no genre likes to deconstruct itself more than anime does.
Yeah, that's
which
very
I think
true.
is because everybody who works on it is constantly sleep deprived and probably on speed.
Well, also because at this point you've had multiple generations of fans growing up and making more of it, and I mean, for that matter, like Tezuka was already deconstructing his own work, so
Yes,
it's just baked into the genre, I think.
and his own relationship with Disney, and you know, if you want to see more of that, you can watch the latest Miyazaki movie. But not
No,
necessarily.
I'm not watching. I gave up on Miyazaki after Kazutachi no.
Yeah, I wasn't saying you. I was saying the audience. That was the royal you of the audience.
Speaking of anime that is fascist apologetics,
Yep. But I think that if Senketsu represents anything, it is like, okay, he is the art, you know. He is the art that can be used for good and for evil. He is the art that can, you know, that is exploitative, but it's also the true expression of love.
yeah, I mean, given that he is drawing, like he's fed on blood running through Ryuko's hand very specifically, that is very much yes. This is art.
He is the carpal tunnel syndrome that is.
Well, just, you know, he's the lifeblood that flows from your fingers
Yes,
into the world.
and is also crippling you while you do all of these keyframes.
Yes,
but
right, but I mean, not just physically crippling, like also, you know, he drains her blood and energy, like, you know.
right.
This is anime that has a very complicated relationship with all sorts of art.
Yeah, and I think like in the end, it's, you know, was this worth like the terrifying and, you know, politically, you know, dubious and, you know, and personally difficult, you know, ordeal of tearing ourselves away from our, you know, parent studio and setting up, you know, shop ourselves, and like what, you know, for this thing which is like so painful and all consuming, and why the fuck do we do this anyway? And, you know, there's sort of that, you know, there's that element of refusal of the call.
Well, especially because, I mean, the show ends with Senketsu burns himself up saving Ryuko, and the thing, but, you know, and fail. Like, he gets her, but he's not able to save her from crashing to the ground, and the thing that actually saves her is a giant pile of naked friends and family to break her fall.
Yeah.
But, like, he you know, he burns up, and, you know, he says basically, well, you've outgrown me. Time to live your happy life.
Yeah, and ideally, we're, you know, time to get a more like healthy work-life balance in when we work on our next project.
Yeah, but you notice she still gets like PTSD flashbacks whenever during the date when she spots somebody else wearing a sailor fuku. So
yes, her trigger is clothes. Maybe she does need to go back to Nudist Beach after all at this point.
Well, I mean, no, it's actually she thinks she sees Senketsu, and then no, it's just a school uniform.
Yes. But I think that's what it. When she says that my relationship with Mako and with Senketsu is stronger than friendship, I think that is uncomplicatedly love, and that's like love for the art, love for your girlfriend, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then at the end, you get, you know, she has this newfound sister who she can love.
Yes, you know, love for family and that kind of thing. You know, it's one of those where it's like, you know, we thankfully this is not one of those like we're going to try to, you know, redeem your relationship with your horrible mother. No, she's going to.
No, she's going to rip out her own heart just to spite you, which is actually a really great metaphor for what happens when you become estranged from your mother.
Yeah, no, that's there's a lot of imagery in like the last few episodes of the show that, you know, just that hits you right there, as it were. So that's our take for a show that
that's our take on Kill la Kill.
For a show that starts out looking like it's just going to be a whole bunch of gags about, you know, looking into teenagers' boobs and getting a nosebleed and smacking into a bridge abutment, which it also is. But
thank you very much to the person who suggested this, because then Isaac jokingly said, "Oh, sure, I would do Kill la Kill," and then I took him up on it, and then he had to watch the whole thing, and we got a good episode out of it.
Drost, you are my strangest friend. I'm glad that you still hang around with us sometimes. All right. Shall we? So on to the next 100 episodes of Wizards versus Lesbians.
Oh my God. I cannot believe we've done an entire 100 episodes. On to the next 100 episodes, where we may take a more expansive definition of lesbians to match our expansive definition of wizards. Where we're just going to, be covering more books.
We're gonna do some anime. Aubrey Maturin coming up, assuming that Alexis will, wants to
can get through volume 17.
Yeah,
none of the others, just volume 17.
I've decided we're just going to do volume 17 of the Aubrey Maturin series, and so on. Things are going to get a little weirder around here, but
that's good, because I feel like Make It Weirder has long been one of the core points of the podcast. So
it's certainly the moral of Kill la Kill. So yeah, no, we're gonna try to read less mediocre science fiction and read, more great and or awful books. So,
but don't worry, there will still be the occasional mediocre book. Of course. Because why should I suffer alone?
I mean, really, the thing that started this podcast was Alexis reading a book, and it's like, I need to talk to somebody else who's read this book, and nobody else will have read this book. So,
yep.
Hey, Isaac. So,
hey, it worked for Foreigner.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed, all 20 whatever books of that. So, yep. Yeah. More of that then.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, guys, for following us through 100 entire episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're both kind of tired. All right, Let's wrap this up. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Hanging up now.